Hi there, this is Mohammed from mathspie.com, and today we're just going to be going through factorising quadratics. Specifically in this video we'll be factorising quadratics that are in the form x squared plus bx plus c. So there'll be no number in front of the x squared term, no coefficient. These are considered the most basic of quadratics that you'd be trying to factorise, and all of these will be factorising to double brackets. So first of all, to understand how factorization of quadratics actually works, we'll look at the opposite of that, which is expanding double brackets. So let's just set up an example and we can have a look at what happens when you actually expand double brackets. So let's take x plus 4 times x plus 3, and let's multiply out the brackets here and see what happens. So the first term here would be x squared, followed by positive 3x plus 3x plus 4x, and then plus 12. Simplifying that is going to give us x squared plus 7x plus 12. So when you're factorising, you'll be starting with a expanded quadratic such as this, and what you're looking for here is the relationship between the numbers that you have available. So first of all, here you have the positive 7 and also the positive 12, the constant term. So here, because we know the factorized form, which is here, we can actually see what the relationship is. So you can see that for the 7, the two numbers that you have inside the brackets, the plus 4 and the plus 3, those two numbers quite simply would add to make 7. So we would have 3 plus 4 makes the middle term there, 7. And then the same two numbers, positive 4 and positive 3, would multiply to make the constant term, which is 12. So when you're attempting to factorize, you will be looking for two numbers that will add or sum to make the middle coefficient, which here is positive 7, and the same two numbers will have to multiply to make the constant term, which in this case is 12, and we get 3 times 4 is 12. Once you find those two numbers, they will just fit into a double bracket scenario there. So now we'll go through the process of factorizing a quadratic. So let's get started by just going through an example and how you should approach this. So let's say we took x squared plus 7x plus 10. So the relationship you're looking for here is that the two numbers you're looking for, they would have to multiply to make the constant term at the end there, which is positive 10. And the same two numbers would have to add to make the middle term coefficient, which in this case is positive 7. Now, this is a particularly easy example because everything is positive. So you could just look at this and say, okay, 5 and 2. But this is basically what you're looking for. You're just looking for the numbers that satisfy this relationship. And once you've found those, you will write those in. Now, because our answer is 5, we write plus 5, and the other answer is 2, so we write plus 2. And that's it. Now, the difficulties can occur when negatives start to get involved and when you have sort of more choices. So we'll do another positive one again, but I'll break it down in a bit more detail in terms of what you should be looking for. So here we've got x squared plus 6x plus 8. Once again, setting it up with double brackets here. So here we're looking for two numbers that multiply to make 8, and the same two numbers have to add together to make 6. Now what you should be focusing on first of all is the product. Looking at the 8, this is what's going to limit your options. So these questions get more difficult when you have too many options to consider. And if you're trying to think immediately, say for the sum, for the 6, and then in the back of your mind you're thinking of the 8, it can get quite confusing. So thinking of the 8 first of all is going to limit your options. Now factor pairings of 8 are not that many. So you've got 1 times 8, 2 times 4. You should be looking for the one that immediately is going to give you a 6, and obviously in this case that is 2 and 4. So we put 2 and 4 in. Very important at this stage, you then go over to the sum and just check that you've done that correctly. 2 plus 4 equals 6. So we can say, okay, that's fine. And then confirm the product. 2 times 4 is 8. So what we've done there is we have forced the sum to be correct, and then we have checked the product. Once both of those are fine, we have our answer. Okay, so let's start to make the examples a bit more difficult now. So let's do x squared plus 10x minus 24. So once again, setting up your answer here with double brackets, x in each bracket, and we're going to do our product and sum. So our product here is negative 24, and the same two numbers we'll have to add to make 10. So at this stage, just focus on the product. Take a look at the 24, ignoring the negative, and just look at the factor pairings for 24. You've got 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, or 4 and 6. Hopefully you can see now that there's a bit of a problem here, because you actually have two factor pairings that could be possible here. You have the 2 and the 12, which there is a possibility of making a 10 by adding and subtracting through there, and there's also the 4 and the 6. Now what you need to do is just pick one. So let's say, for example, we pick the 4 and the 6. So we put that into the sum and the product, 4 and 6, with no signs. At this stage, focus on the sum. You must force the sum to be correct and then check the product. So looking at it now, 4 plus 6 is 10. So we don't need to make any changes to that. So the sum is correct. Now when we go up to the product, however, 4 times 6 is not negative 24. So these two numbers did not work for the product. So what we did, we forced the sum and then we checked the product. And as you can see, that has not worked. If that happens, it's quite simple. The numbers are totally wrong, and there's no point you wasting any more time trying to make it work with the 4 and 6. This is when you would just remove those and try it with the other pairing, which is 2 and 12. So let's try it with 2 and 12. I usually like to put the larger number first. So we've got 12 and 2 here, 12 and 2 here. Once again, going to the sum, force the sum to be correct. So at the moment, 12 plus 2 is 14. For me to make this 10, I need to change the 2 to a negative. So now I have 12 take away 2, or 12 plus minus 2 is 10. This is correct. Make the same change on the product and check it. 12 times negative 2 is negative 24. That is also now correct, and that must mean that my numbers are absolutely correct for this question. So going back to our answer here, it would just be x plus 12, x minus 2. So let's set up another example here. X squared minus 13x minus 30. Straight away, we know it's double brackets again, x in each bracket. And then we'll just move over to the sum. I'll just remove these so we have space. So looking for our product and sum again, we're looking for two numbers that multiply to make negative 30, and the same two numbers have to add to make negative 13. What do we do first? Always look at the product first, ignoring any negatives. Factor pairings for 30, 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. Same problem again here. We have two factor pairings that could be possible here, because 3 and 10, clearly there's a possibility of making a 13 here, and the same for 2 and 15. So once again, you just want to pick one. So let's pick the 3 and the 10. So putting that into the sum, 3 and 10, 3 and 10. At this stage, always looking at the sum. Force the sum to be correct. 3 plus 10 at the moment is positive 13. And we'd like it to be negative 13. So for that to happen, both of these would have to be negative. The sum is now correct. We have forced the sum to be correct. Now we just have to check the product. So I have to make the same change here. So changing it here, negative 3 times negative 10 makes positive 30. so the product is incorrect. And this quite simply means that the numbers 3 and 10 just do not work for this at all. So then you would want to move over to the 2 and the 15. So we'll just remove those and then we'll try it again with 2 and 15. So let's start with the higher number here. So 15 and 2, 15 and 2 in both parts there. And we're going to once again force the sum to be correct. To get negative 13 here, we need 15 to be negative. Now we've forced the sum to be correct. Negative 15 plus 2 is negative 13, that's correct. And then make the same change on the product and then just check that's correct. Negative 15 times positive 2 is negative 30, so that's all correct. And then that means that we found our numbers. So the factorized form must be x minus 15 and then x plus 2. Now all of this part that we're doing in red, with practice hopefully you'll be able to do that part in your head without writing it out. But when you're initially learning the topic, this can be a very useful visual tool for you to sort of process what's going on with the negatives and the positives. It can be very difficult at first, and it takes a fair amount of practice to be able to do this process without writing the product and the sum separately. The main thing that people find difficult with this is just the use of negative numbers and sort of making mistakes with those. Now the better you are with negative numbers, the more you get used to how they behave, the easier you will find topics like this, and just algebra and number in general. Negatives are a big part of that, so just keep with that. I'll move on to trying to do it now without writing out the product and the sum on the side, just to show you how, with practice, how you can get to a level where you are able to do it as quick as possible. So let's take x squared plus 9x minus 22. And we're going to attempt to do this without writing out any of the product and sum on the side there. So putting x and x in. So you should be going over in your mind thinking of the negative 22 and thinking of the factors of 22. Here I know that 11 and 2 are going to give me a 9. So what you should do here is write in the 11 and the 2 with no signs. And then go over to the sum, which is positive 9, force the sum to be correct. So that's plus 11 minus 2. Then check the product in your head, which will be positive 11 times negative 2, which gives negative 22, and checking that gives a constant term, so that's all correct. And that's it. So let's try another one. So let's take x squared minus 4x minus 12. Just setting up our double bracket here. X in each bracket. At this stage, just thinking about the 12, ignore any negatives at this stage. Thinking about factors of 12 that are going to add or subtract to give positive 4. Don't worry about the negative right now. So I know that 6 and 2, there's a possibility of making a 4. So if I can make 4, I can make negative 4. Now we move over to the sum, negative 4. There'll only be one way to make this correct, and in this case, that is going to be negative 6 plus 2. Once you do this, you must check the product. So we force the sum, which is negative 4, check the product. Negative 6 times positive 2 gives negative 12, and that's all correct. So let's do one last example. Let's do x squared minus 11x plus 30. Same thing again, x in both brackets. Thinking of the product, which is 30, and the sum, which is 11, ignoring negatives at this point. Factors of 30 that are going to give me 11. I know 6 and 5 can give me an 11. Then go over to the sum, force the sum of negative 11 to be correct. In this case, both would have to be negative. We've forced the sum, now we check the product. Negative 6 times negative 5 gives positive 30, and that's absolutely correct. So that's the process. Just keep practicing and it will get easier and easier and quicker and quicker. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.